Today on our 2015 Lexus GX 460, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install the Timbren Rear Suspension Enhancement System, part number TTORSEQ. So whether you're towing a heavy trailer or you have a lot of gear in the back hatch, that can put a lot of strain and stress on the rear suspension of our Lexus. It's going to cause the vehicle to sag down a bit, which is going to reduce the lifespan of our suspension and put a lot of stress on other things. And since it's going to be pushing down on the back, that's actually going to raise up the front end, which is going to make less contact on our front tires, which means our steering and stopping is going to be diminished, as well as the headlights are going to be out of alignment, so they're going to be further up, which can cause a lot of problems at night. So now that we have all of our gear loaded in the back and our Lexus weighed down, let's take it on our test course and see how the factory suspension is going to handle it. As we come to the bumps course and we go over our alternating speed bumps, I can definitely tell you that there is a jarring feeling that I'm getting as I'm going over each one. The bumps are a lot more prominent than normal because of the load in the back, and it is resonating through the seat and taking a toll on our back. As we come to the slalom course and we're going in and out of the turns, it does seem like it doesn't want to grab and start turning as well. It's just not as responsive. Just have a very mushy floating feeling in the front end. With our timbers installed, you can see that we have a lot more of a level stance and it's sitting right where it should be rather than the back end sagging down, which also means the front is right where it should be also. The front of our Lexus isn't getting pulled up anymore. It's right where it should be. The tires are firmly planted on the ground, so our steering and braking is going to be a lot more responsive, and our headlights are realigned. With the same load in the back, let's take our Lexus back on our test course and see how the Timbrens handle. I can immediately tell the difference going over the bumps. I don't have this jarring feeling coming through the seat, and it doesn't feel like as big of an impact as it did before. Now, as we're going in and out of the turns, it definitely feels more stable. When I go to turn, it responds very quickly, and it genuinely just feels like it wants to go a little bit faster. Our Timbrens are going to have a 3,000 pound weight capacity. Now keep in mind that's not meant to increase the payload of our Lexus, it's just there to help support the weight. So you always want to double check your owner's manual and never exceed the manufacturer's recommended weight. So here's what our Timbrens are going to look like once we have them installed. And these are going to provide us a lot of stability and support whenever we have a large load in the back of our hatch or if we're towing a heavy trailer. The way they're going to do that is because they're going to mount in between our frame and our axle, and whenever the suspension starts to sag down, they're going to take a lot of that force and stress off of the factory suspension. Our springs are going to have a progressive rate, which means that depending on the type of load we have, they're going to act differently. If we have a large, heavy load, they're going to become more stiffer the more they compress. But if we have a lighter load, they're going to engage a lot softer and absorb a lot of the road shock when we're driving down the road, making it more comfortable. Our springs are going to work independently from each other side to side, which is going to help out a lot if we have an off-center load on our trailer or if we have a lot of gear loaded in on one side. Now also, whenever we're going around turns, we get a lot of body roll. This is going to help reduce that dramatically because again, it's going to work independently, so it's going to reduce that swaying feeling. Our springs are going to be made out of a hollow rubber, so they're going to stand up to a lot of those automotive chemicals and salt spray that we find on the roads, but at the same time have a lot more give and cushion to them compared to the polyurethane style versions. Our Timbrens are going to be a custom design. They're going to be fit directly to our Lexus, and it's not going to require any kind of cutting or drilling at all. They're simply going to bolt into the factory location for our joust stop and use the existing holes. So now that we've gone over some features and seen what they look like, let's show you how to get them installed. To begin our installation, we're going to want to come underneath our Lexus right at the rear axle here. Now we're going to want to lift it up. We don't need to lift it to where the tires are off the ground, but we want to lift it by the frame enough so that there's a little bit of stretch in between the axle and the frame. And then if we come right above our axle, we'll have our factory joust stop. Now this is going to be held in by 2 bolts, one in the back and then one on the front side of it. We're going to remove those 2 bolts and pull the factory joust stop out. So we'll grab a 12mm socket and we'll unthread those bolts. pull our jound stop out, and we're not going to be reusing the hardware. Our new jound stops are going to come pre-assembled. We'll have our bracket on top and then our rubber spring on the bottom. However, if yours didn't come assembled, there's going to be a bolt on the inside and a washer going through our spring into the bracket. You just want to make sure that that washer and bolt fully engage each other so that the spring won't be moving around, and you can see it is a little bit loose. So we're going to take a 3/4 inch socket and we'll tighten up that bolt. Just want to make sure that spring isn't moving around on the bracket itself. Now, right where we moved our factory jound stop, that's where our new one's going to go. But they're going to provide us with new hardware. We'll take one of the bolts and a flat washer, and each one is going to go through the bracket into the weld nut that's welded on the frame. So we can take our jound stop and we'll get one threaded in by hand. That way it'll help hold it in place. And you can see they're slotted, so it's going to make it a lot easier getting the bolts lined up and be able to get up to them and get them started. So we'll slide it towards the other side so we can get the other bolt started. And we'll snug out the bolts by hand to where we can still move that spring. You want to get it as centered over the axle as you can. And since the bottom of the bracket here is kind of interfering with the head of the bolt, I'm going to be using a ratcheting wrench to tighten up the bolts and make sure they're nice and secure. And with this side done, we'll go ahead and repeat that same process for the other side. That'll finish up your look at the Timbren rear suspension enhancement system, part number TTORSEQ on our 2015 Lexus GX 460.